we joined SaaStock a little while ago and are part of their founder circles. It's been absolutely brilliant for us. We first came into it to further our community, our reach, our network, and to learn from some of the world-class speakers that SaaStock has come and speak. And I have to say, it has been absolutely superb for us.
Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, CEO of SaaStock, and I'm joined today by Alina Vandenberghe, who's the co-founder and co-CEO at Chili Piper. Welcome, Alina. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Alex, for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on the podcast for the first time. This is a little bit in advance of yourself and Nicholas, who's your other co-founder, co-CEO, joining us at SaaStock 2022 in Dublin this October. So very excited for that. We had both you and Nicholas actually speak at one of our SaaStock Blueprint virtual events last year, and we love that session. It's available on YouTube for those that want to listen and watch that particular episode. But Alina, we always ask our guests to kind of start off who they are. So I'm going to start the same with you. You know, who is Alina Vandenberghe?
I was born in communist Romania from parents of very modest means. For us, even books were luxurious, and I started working very early on. I started working maybe when I was around 9 years old or so, to make sure that I can pay for necessities for school. And I started working, I guess, looking back, it's called entrepreneurship. At that time, I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. And all sorts of, I was coming up with all sorts of ways to earn money by helping neighbors, by selling all sorts of products. And eventually I fell in love with computers. I did a master in computer science. I did what I thought I wanted to do, which is to climb the corporate ladder in America. I started as an intern. I quickly got promoted because I started working on mobile at that time, and there were very few people that had experience in mobile, and I was interested in it. One of the first apps that I built was immediately keynoted and announced with the iPad by Steve Jobs. It was a big win for our company because it was an app that was preloaded with the iPad. As you can imagine, it got a huge reach. And then since then, I noticed that I had a talent for building products that had very high engagement. I did it for many industries, for finance, for media, for healthcare, and for education as well. But I realized that I was not quite made for the corporate world. I was very antithetical to climbing the political ladder because I had zero political bones in me. I was a builder, and I am a builder. I started my own company in 2016, Chili Piper, and the rest is history.
A good history with that. Thanks for sharing that. And I think you definitely stake the claim to one of the youngest or earlier starting entrepreneurs, you know, that we've had on the podcast. But as you said, like out of necessity. And I think obviously that upbringing is, you know, seemingly sort of led you to obviously be where you are now. And where you are now is the co-founder and co-CEO of Chili Piper. So I'd love to hear the founding story behind Chili Piper, and also just about why, like, the co-CEO sort of decision as well, because you do hear it from time to time, but it's not necessarily the norm. So would love to get a bit of insights into both.
So the co-founding story is probably a bit more unusual. My co-founder and husband was at that time a serial entrepreneur. He was starting his 5th business. I guess what in the startup world we call a hustler. He is very, very good at marketing, very good at sales, very good at operations, and very good at fundraising and all the process that takes to build a company. And he felt like he was missing the product, the builder mindset that I had. And he felt like that we would make a great team. At that time, I wasn't fully convinced that it was in the stars for me, but he kept insisting. And finally, I gave in and I said, I'm going to do it, but with one condition, if I'm the CEO. And we started knowing that we wanted to tackle business critical needs within the revenue teams, because he had the experience on that. I was exposed constantly to how the sales teams are working, and I was responsible at some point to building software for them as well. And I felt that there was a huge need to equip the sales teams, the revenue teams, to do what they know to do best, which is to get with prospects and sales and customers on the call to make the deal happen, and the rest is just no nuisance for them. And we wanted to solve for the nuisance and bring as many meetings as we could possibly can in front of them, so that they can more than meet their quota. We weren't quite sure how we're going to start that business, so we started experimenting and talking to customers, and we only figured out how we're going to do it when a company in San Francisco was ready to pay in advance for us to build a solution for them to solve for a need that they had at that time. We asked a few people around if they also had that problem. They did, and that's when we made it a product and slowly built up from there to constantly solve for business critical needs.
I'm sure you've been asked this question before. I'll ask it anyway, but I guess not necessarily what it's like to work with your partner, your husband or your wife, but what is it like to be co-CEO? And what is the secret of being co-CEO to somebody that you're married to? Because I guess lots of people do, work with their other halves, but not necessarily, run a company together as co-CEOs. So I think for me, that's quite unusual. And I don't know if you've heard of anybody else doing that. I'm sure there probably is some cases. But yeah, what's the secret there?
As you can imagine, VCs were not very thrilled to see us husband and wife in front of them pitching. I don't think that people see it necessarily when you look at it from a venture perspective, when you have to invest money and you look at the experiences that of people around you and couples and how they get along, then you see that might be a problem, because in general, couples, after a while, after they spend a lot of time together, they tend to have a license to criticize one another. I don't know. This is what I've noticed around me. I didn't have that problem. I've been married to Nicola for 14 years, and we've been together for longer. We've never had that problem. We've always had very constructive ways of solving problems, and we've always had a very different approach to solving a problem. So whenever we would see something that was wrong, instead of saying, oh, you always do that, or you are like that, like applying a label to the other, we always look at the problem. This is what I need. This is what you need. How do we solve for that problem? So our resolution process was always very seamless, and we've always had a lot of respect for one another, and we're very, very different, and at the same time very respectful of the other's point of view. And that is very reflected in how we make decisions at work as well. So it felt very natural to us, but I can see that it can be perceived as hard to do if you have that life experience where you constantly argue with your spouse, and it's hard to reach a resolution on important topics.
How do you do, just a quick example, divvy up, as co-CEOs, what is it that you're responsible for, and what is it that Nicholas is responsible for? Just understanding, because I'm sure there are many CEOs that are listening to this, but how do you split that role?
So we, at the beginning, we started by having me in the CEO role with all the duties that are associated with that, with all the decision-making process for where the company is going. And Nicola had the title of CRO, Chief Revenue Officer. After 3 years or so, I became pregnant, and I was less equipped to handle all the decision making that came with that responsibility. So we split it differently. He was CEO and I was Chief Product Officer. I was focusing solely on the product. And now that I have two beautiful boys that have now they're 1-year-old and 3-year-old, we decided that it's back to put the titles that are reflective of what we do, because every important decision we don't take without consulting one another. I'm a lot more focused on right now on marketing, on cultural things that we do at Chili Piper. I am also focused a lot on product, of course, because that's my background. And Nicola is sales, customer success, and now he's very involved with the engineering team as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And can you give the audience, listeners and viewers, like a little bit of a picture, some like data on the company? So, you know, how big is Chili Piper now? You know, sort of revenue, how many employees, global locations, money raised, this sort of thing. What metrics can you share?
So we have 250 employees in 42 countries. So we're quite distributed by now. We started remote only since 2016, so it's not something that has happened just because of COVID. And we are on track to be, at the end of the year, $30-something million in ARR. That's double from last year. We've our last financial transaction gets us close to $1 billion. So we're kind of, depending on where you look at the trends and the financial data, considered a unicorn. And we have, what else? We also have a foundation. We started that foundation a bit early on, and we've pledged $1 million from that. Those are some of the numbers that I can share.
Thank you for sharing that. And I guess kind of like we're soon or shortly going to talk about the topic that we sort of decided was about, you know, it's being naive, the thinking that you've got a great product, and if you have a great product that you've made it. But just before that, can you share maybe sort of like one or two like key lessons from building Chili Piper to date that you think would be, you know, applicable or interesting to our audience?
I can think of a few things that would have been useful for me maybe a few years back. Because I kept building products that kept getting engagement and were used by millions of users, I was very confident in my skill set of building a product that has engagement and people love. What I wasn't quite understanding when in my past work was how important the brand is in that process, because I was building products for companies that already had a brand. So when you build something for Bloomberg, Bloomberg is already known, people will already check it out. If you build something for Pearson, Pearson is already known, they're going to check it out. And in healthcare, the company that I was working for was had some investors from Oprah and Dr. Oz. So those are already brands that are known. At that time, I didn't give as much credit to building a brand. And that's something that I wish I was a lot more cognizant of at the beginning, to spend a lot more time on. I already did more of a out of intuition, but not out of fully understanding the importance of that. And secondly, I felt also quite naive in my understanding of what marketing really is when it's applied correctly to product and all the components that go into a stellar marketing team to be able to go to market at scale. I think those are the two big lessons in the past 6 months for me that have, I wish I could go back in time and say, Alina, pay attention a lot more to marketing, pay a lot of attention, much more attention to brand. And I think we would have scaled a lot faster if I would have doubled my energy on it.
Now you have this realization, you know, awareness about how crucial brand, you know, and go-to-market is to achieve greatness, I think, as you said. And it'd be interesting to see or your view on what is greatness. But with a great product, I think you can do a lot. But to thrive, you need, you know, great marketing, great go-to-market, you know, strong brand. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Like, how did you come to the realization, you know, kind of first of all, and then also like, what is greatness? I'm curious to know.
I understood the importance of a brand by watching some entrepreneurs around me who have been doing that very well with a product that might have not been the best in breed, but had table stakes features. And by building a brand that people recognize and people aligned behind, they managed to get a lot more market share than it would have been expected from the product that they've had. And by spending time watching those entrepreneurs, I understood that they were doing things that I was not doing. And just being exposed to a lot more marketers, a lot more people in those fields, I kept asking questions, but why do you do that? And how do you do it? And why do you think about it this way? Why do you prioritize it this way? Until I got to the understanding that it was making a huge impact for them, and it was silly for us to not power that engine as well.
Can you share, I mean, if you're happy to do so, who were these companies or entrepreneurs, what was it that they were doing that you weren't doing?
I guess a good example that people can resonate with is HubSpot. At the beginning, HubSpot was not well known for the product, right? Everybody knew Dharmesh because he was always present and always visible, and their content was really, really good. Their product at the beginning wasn't there yet. It took them some time until HubSpot really became something that was widely spread. They had Sidekick that went viral, and they got a lot of attraction at that time. Now their CRM is free and has really good features. And it wasn't always the case, and yet HubSpot was very well known. And the reason why HubSpot was very well known was because the brand that Brian and Dharmesh Shah had built was very strong. That's a good example of somebody that I've watched.
Yeah, no, a very good example. And yeah, I mean, I remember I don't know if they still have, was it the inbound marketing community but there was some sort of like forum that was run, which was like hugely popular. I remember in 2016 anyway, I used to look at it, but and Dharmesh was very much involved, but I'm not sure if he or I don't think he still is anymore, if that still exists or not, but a good example. And then, so in terms of then what you need to do to really kind of address, okay, we've got a great product, but now we're going to need to do these other things, right? And we need to have a real focus on great marketing and great go-to-market, really build this brand. So what is it that now you have this realization that you're doing? Like, what's in the plan? What are you doing now, and what's coming up?
I think that if I understood your question correctly, is once you understood that the brand is and marketing is important, what actions one would take to amplify the volume there?
Yeah, exactly. What are you specifically doing? Yeah.
The first step is it has to match you as a founder. The brand has to match you as a founder. Otherwise, it's very unnatural to take action. And from the beginning, I knew what the brand standed for. I just didn't amplify those values. But that's kind of like the table stakes is how do you want your brand to be seen? How do you want your brand to be represented? And based on that, take actions that amplify those values. So for me, I knew that I'm going to win if I do everything in my power to help my customers succeed beyond just using the product, helping them succeed in their role with information that I might have on the industry, with benchmarks, with introducing them with somebody who might help them solve a problem. So I was so focused on helping our customers without knowing that was brand, but that is brand. The fact that you spend a lot of time to bring a lot of value to your customers beyond your product, that is a value, and that was highlighted from the very, day zero on our value proposition on our company page, help. The second one, that was also part of my personality. I felt that every B2B brand out there and every enterprise software that I was looking at was very, very, very boring. Like I was looking at that time, Siebel, I was looking at software that Oracle was launching, even Salesforce. It feels so antiquated and it feels so boring. And I was so afraid of building something that I was dreading, and that's something that I wasn't in alignment with. My life is very unusual. It's anything but boring. I spend a lot of time doing things that others probably would consider crazy. For instance, I went to Egypt at the time when there was a revolution in Tahrir Square. I went to Kyiv after the Russians attacked, not this time, but last time the Russians attacked. I went to Kyiv and I was there and kind of watched the tanks in the main square. I like to understand the world at its depth, and I wanted the brand to be representative of that thirst that I have for knowledge, and at the same time
live every day as if it's the last one, make the most out of it through fun and also compassion. And as a result, we started doing all sorts of things in that regard. We started doing our own hot sauce that was part of the brand because it's chili pepper, so the hot sauce was very natural. We started doing all sorts of songs about our brand and distributing that and involving our customers through the playfulness of it. And at the same time, the third value that's also important to me, which is to give back to the world and its beauty and the diversity in the world, and started including all sorts of communities in our reach that might otherwise not have been prioritized, paying a lot of attention to diversity.
Great examples there. I mean, look, for me, I mean, I don't know if I pay attention like more than your average Joe or Jane, but I've certainly noticed, let's say the last 12, 24 months, all of these brand kind of plays or that chili pipe has been running. And I think, had you not done a hot sauce, then, you would have been doing something wrong. I mean, that obviously had to be done. And I quite enjoyed the Chili Piper song, I think that came out last year. I'm not going to ask you to sing a few verses, but that's optional. But definitely you can see how that works. Both, I think, externally, well, whether it's external marketing, but for customers, but also like branding for hiring and, for the team as well. I think, that's just as important. I think showing that you've got a fun culture, and a fun place to work and an interesting place to work. Often there are these benefits of branding within that. And from what you're doing, for me, it looks like, hey, I think we're like taking the guys to Ibiza or Mexico and we're recording these songs and, we're having fun along the way. And like, who wouldn't want to work for a company like that? Potentially some introverts or people, not fun people, right?
I don't think that people would prioritize those kind of things if they wouldn't feel strongly that they're necessary. In our case, the annual trip that's legendary by now, a lot of people have seen our videos of things that we do in Ibiza and things that we've done in Tulum. You can see that if you're a founder and you don't really care about those things, it's very unnatural. That's why I think that the naturalness is an important fact. But also, probably even more important is that unless your employees feel the values of your brand internally, they really feel that actions that themselves are taking to align with the brand values, then it's really, really impossible to have that brand outside. First, you have to be chili piper inside and then chili piper outside. That's why for us, the company trip is very important to have alignment and cohesiveness around our employees, which otherwise are working remotely and are in front of Zoom screens. So it's a lot harder for them to leave those moments with us.
What about thoughts on like user conferences? Have you thought about that? Because I know you mentioned obviously HubSpot earlier and Salesforce and Gainsight, for instance, some quite like more mature, shall we say, SaaS companies that, with brand and, with their customers and users, they started user conferences probably quite early and grown them into behemoths. But I don't know if it's fair to say, but I feel like I seem to be seeing less user conferences these days with SaaS companies. But also we have had, COVID for the last few years. So, that's probably had, some part to do with it. But have you thought about from the brand play and, customer base, et cetera, if user conferences is part of your marketing strategy?
I'm very, very bullish on in-person meetings. I think that they're very important. And especially for customers, when you meet them in person, you form a different kind of relationship if you always see them on Zoom, especially in SaaS. We do a lot of events. We do at least, a few events per month that involve our customers, and they're local events where we invite them to all sorts of experiences. We haven't done one where thousands of people attend yet, because I don't feel that I've yet cracked the right format to bring so many people together and yet keep the brand values in a way that resonates with me. Typically, when you go to some of these massive conferences, you put your badge on, you kind of feel confused. There's so many booths, there's so many tracks that you're supposed to go to. There's so many dinners, so many happy hours. And I don't feel that experience aligns with how I want to to run this kind of conference unless I find the format where I know that indeed I can represent the values of the brand nicely, then I'll do it. Even for a company trip, when we were 30 of us, it was a lot more intimate. Last time we did it in Tulum, we were 100 and something people there. And it was already, I felt like it was already hard to get that nice feeling. We did cabanas. We didn't do this massive Marriott or something like that. We did these small cabanas on the beach, and it was really, really beautiful, and the experience was amazing. We managed to do the right kind of atmosphere, the right kind of events. I don't know that I can do that with a massive conference with 1,000 people, but I'm still thinking about the best way. If I crack it, I'll do it.
Okay. If you ever want to talk about chat conferences, we can do that, maybe in Dublin. Moving on to the quick-fire-ish sort of round. One thing has moved the needle the most for Chili Piper to date?
One thing in which department?
I don't know. I mean, pick anything like overall, or you can pick a department. I don't really mind. So something that's really moved the dial.
In the past year, obviously, for us, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of hiring the right people in the right spots putting the energy behind the right motions to have the intended effect. But if I was to just name one thing that make the most impact for us, for sure, it's the people. I don't know. Companies are made of people. People are the most important thing. We spend a lot of time to make sure that our team has all the resources for growth. We have more coaches per employees than Google does to ensure that that's going on. And we invest a lot on career trajectory, on skill sets growth, on people finding their center of excellence for their interests. And we do a lot more than any other company that I know on that in that side.
Great stuff. What's the best advice you've ever received?
It was from my mom when I was young in high school, and I was feeling that everybody around me was a lot smarter than I was, and I felt like I could never surpass their intelligence, and that I felt I was very limited in my potential for growth. And she said that I have to give myself a little bit more credit and a little bit more patience when I see a big gap in my understanding of the world and others, and just be more patient with myself.
Good advice indeed, and yeah, thanks, Mum, for that. What is the hardest thing about being a co-CEO? I was going to say, like, you can answer this as the hardest thing about being a CEO or a co-CEO. I don't mind.
It's nonstop. It never ends. It starts at 6 a.m. It goes on until 2 a.m. and it's weekends. It's nonstop. And it's nonstop hard problems to solve. You're always going to get the one that gets all the urgent things that are happening and conflicts that you might need to solve for. And sometimes you have very little information to make that decision, and you have to make a decision really, really fast. So it's quite intense. And I think that if one doesn't fully love it and feels fully invested in the mission, I think it's really impossible to break through it and then sustain that level of intensity. Most sane people give up because they're sane, but the insane ones are going to put up with it if they really love it.
No, definitely. Not naming names, but I know somebody that started a business sort of recently, and, you know, it's not a passion for them. It's not, you know, something that they love, and therefore you can kind of really see that in terms of the amount of effort and that they kind of put into it, you know, versus obviously somebody that really kind of lives and breathes the mission and is really kind of passionate. And it doesn't really, despite the long and hard hours, if you have that and you are passionate about the mission, it doesn't really become work, right? It's just kind of life, and you enjoy what you're doing, and gives you that energy to do the long hours, right?
That's right.
It still means like CEOs and other people can still burn out from doing all these sort of long hours. So tell me a little bit about then your daily routine and like how, or what do you do like to kind of help like optimize for being a CEO within your daily routine?
Probably my days look a lot different than anybody else's days, and probably because I'm so motivated to build Chili Piper to its potential where I think it can grow. I don't spend any time ever. I don't think I've watched any movie in the past 6 years. So I don't spend any time on TV or Netflix. I don't spend much time socializing. So I don't have much of a social life. And instead, not that I'm completely a hermit, but compared to what I would be potentially doing, I do very little of that. I also don't encourage this to anybody. It's just something that has worked for me. I only eat once a day, so I don't spend time cooking or cleaning up. I also don't cook myself. I don't enjoy it. And that saves me a lot of time because I see that people think about the prep, they think about what to eat, and they spend a lot of time on that. Again, I don't recommend this is what works for me. Fasting has helped my mental clarity. Mm-hmm. So as a result, I have many, many hours in the day to just think about the business. But I also have kids, and I want to make the most of the time that I have with them at this beautiful age. They're so, so cute. So I would say that from the time I wake up until the time I go to sleep, it's all work-related things. And especially since I have my husband, we talk about it when we drive. We talk about it before we go to sleep. We talk about all sorts of things. And the time when the kids are not at school, I try to make most of that time to be with them.
And thank you for sharing that. Is your typical day then, is it starting at 6 and does it end at 2 a.m. every night? Or do you have some nights where you're going to bed, I don't know, at 10 or 11 or something like that?
I try to get like a normal amount of sleep, somewhere between 6 or 8 hours if I can. It's a lot harder when the baby keeps waking you up and
True.
You have, depending on where they are on the growth spurts. In the past couple of years, I've had very inconsistent sleep because of that. But I do try to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. So I try to go to sleep somewhere around 10 and try to wake up at 6, but with a lot of wakings in between. And I always try to get in sports. Without sports, I think I would be completely bananas. And I spend at least 4 hours or sometimes 5 hours a week to make sure that I get my body in a strong position to be able to resist all the things that are being thrown at me.
Great stuff. And so what is it now? Maybe it's like 50 days or so, but October 18th and 19th, yourself, Nicholas, and I think your two young boys are coming over to Dublin. I think they're not speaking at SaaStock, but you and Nicholas are. Or we could get them to speak if they're up for it.
That'd be interesting.
And have the whole family on stage. But so you're coming over. Do you know what you'll be speaking about yet? And also, what are you looking forward to about the conference coming over to Dublin for SaaStock?
I can't wait to meet the entrepreneurs in Europe. There are a lot of things that they're doing that the US counterparts are not, and I look forward to learning from them, especially from the growth hacking type of community. They're doing super interesting things. I am going to go on stage with my co-founder, with Nicolas, and we're going to go deeper into some of the learnings that we've had in our journey. His learnings were a little bit different than mine because we were all at different times in our lives. But we want to share some of the things that transformed us and made us able to get to that unicorn status and how we went about it.
Amazing. Well, really looking forward to that and meeting you both in person. I'm pretty sure I've met Nicholas before in person, but yourself, that's not the case. We're looking forward to seeing you and the family and SaaStock, and appreciate you making the trip, hopping over the pond for that. So you said that you don't really watch, or you haven't watched a film in 6 years. You don't watch Netflix. I'm assuming you may do a bit of reading then in its place. What is your either favorite business book or favorite book, and what are you currently reading that you can share with the audience?
I read a lot. That I do. I read a lot on topics that I'm interested in and on a learning journey to I'm always learning about new things, and this reading is very important for me. the way I read books is I put earbuds and I close my eyes and I try to fall asleep. And most of the times I fall asleep like 30 minutes into the audiobook. And I listen to the audiobook maybe twice or 3 times the speed. So it's very interesting how the brain processes it. But one of the most impactful books for me that has translated also into our brand and to the work that we do in our company, in our foundation, is a book that was written by Marshall Rosenberg, and it's called Nonviolence Communication. And the reason why it was so impactful for me is because it teaches people how to speak up when they have a problem that they may be afraid to speak up again about, especially to their managers, especially to the company. And that is so important in a company, to have that trust that people can speak up about problems so that you can take action and fix them instead of them lingering and then staying there for too long. And secondly, because it teaches people to have very productive discussion when they feel very differently and have very opposing views about subjects that might be very sensitive for them. And you can see that that's what breaks companies, that's what breaks relationships, that's what starts wars. And it's such an important skill to have. It's not taught in school, it's not taught anywhere. And this book outlines some of the tool sets that can be used for this kind of crucial conversation. And I think it's hyper important. We're doubling down when training. We ship the book to our employees. We give them a day off to read it. It's foundation to our culture and to our work.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I've heard of it, but never read it myself. So I need to get it on the list and read that at some point soon. Final question, where can people find you and Chili Piper online?
I'm on a content creation journey, so I'm going to be found on many platforms. On TikTok, less successful. I think I only have 49 followers. On Instagram, I spend time talking about my family and our boys. And on LinkedIn, I spend the most time talking about what are some of the things that I'm finding through the week as drivers for me or as learnings, so that I can give back to the people that follow me within a professional setting as well.
Good stuff. Well, keep going on TikTok and follow Alina on TikTok if you're listening and like this podcast, which I'm sure you did. Well, Alina Vandenberghe, co-founder, co-CEO of Chili Piper, thank you so much for being on the SaaS Revolution Show and sharing with the SaaStock community. Really looking forward to seeing you in October at SaaStock 2022. Thank you so much, Alina.
Thank you, Alex.